Oh boy, we are live. This is the first transmission ever of the Emerging Frontiers TV.
Years.
The exciting thing about this is the first time we're going live with our Emerging Frontiers TV. So we want to, we really, it's almost like being there at the birth, right? This is a big day because I think it's going to be kind of the backbone of this whole setup. It's really making frontier markets more accessible and more understandable to the main street. You guys are going to change the way that finance flows in and between frontier markets. What's on your mind? What brought you guys to do this? Because you're veterans of the frontier markets, but now you're set to change everything and how finance works. Tell us about that, Kevin.
Well, I think it just stems from being in this business for the last few years, Baldwin, and just realizing how utterly broken and in need of change the not just the financial services industry is, but in the level of control and transparency that a lot of our existing clients are demanding. We've realized that people that we speak with on a daily basis are just increasingly tired of the same old products, the same old communications that they receive from their private bankers, their investment managers, people like us, frankly. And there have been some, against the odds, there have been some really interesting and innovative changes in regulation. Obviously not all for the better, but some certainly are, such as the Jobs Act in the United States 2 years ago, that I think really could, if I can use a cliche, be a game changer for the way that investors or Main Street investors are able to pursue really interesting opportunities. And we've been watching that closely for the last couple of years, and we've been thinking a lot, Paul and I, in our separate firms or separate employers, have always been thinking about how can we leverage these changes and these innovations and take advantage of them. And that ultimately is what started the conversation that brought Emerging Frontiers into fruition, and that's what we're driving to create now.
Yeah, Paul, you and I have had these long conversations, and it's interesting to see that you've been out there. I think you've worked and lived in most of the CIS countries. You've seen it firsthand, and I think just like me, you were in a fund manager trying to essentially convince investors to get more involved in these markets, and all of a sudden you and Kevin, I mean, you pop up again next to Kevin to go and totally turn this one around. What brought you, Paul, to believe in that there's a different way, there's an easier way to get frontier markets into the main street?
Yeah, I suppose it's very serendipitous that we should all meet separately and then sort of congregate around this idea of a better way to do things and putting these markets first of all and the opportunities and entrepreneurs that are in them in front of real private investors around the world and bridging that gap. For me, Baldwin, it's quite personal. It goes back even before my academic studies in law school. I'm from, I made this comment recently, I'm from the northeast of England, which in and of itself is, we joked about Kevin's current location being a previous frontier market, but right now it suffers very much from being disconnected away from the traditional commercial and financial hub of London in the UK. As do many other places that are non-city locations in the UK and also in other developed markets like the US and Europe. And what I noticed when I went over to Azerbaijan in 2006, which is where I started my professional career as a private equity investor, was that actually these markets and the disconnected parts of the developed countries as well shared a lot of the same challenges, especially on the SME landscape. Entrepreneurs needed capital, they needed advice, they needed professional services, and that was just completely absent. It was completely absent, certainly in my hometown, and doubly true in somewhere like Baku or Tbilisi or somewhere in Astana. Some great entrepreneurs I saw when I was the 4 years I lived there, 3 or 4 years I lived there. Some excellent entrepreneurs, some great ideas, but just no no support really, no access, no networks, no nothing. And then moving back into the UK and moving more into the mainstream investment management world, I saw that, on the other side of the coin, investors were constantly looking for these, as you and I have been focused on, as all three of us have been focused on frontier and emerging markets, speaking to investors that specifically wanted to get access to these markets, and particularly in the unlisted space, the private equity space. But again, there was nothing there that was providing them that platform, that portal to put them in touch with entrepreneurs based in these countries. And it was just, it was a natural progression. As Kevin said, I became completely disillusioned with the way that the investment management world in the mainstream works, or doesn't, as the case has been proven, or seems to be proven in our view, over the last few years, and certainly since the crisis in 2008. And in talking to people like yourself, and then Kevin, who I actually first made contact with a couple of years back, because we both focused on the frontier markets, realizing that I wasn't alone in thinking there must be a better way, and it just seemed to gel. Beginning of this year, when Kevin and I began to speak in detail about his ideas of a crowdsourced capital structure that allowed investors in mostly developed markets, but around the world generally, to get real transparency and access to these fantastic entrepreneurs in some of the greatest and most dynamic markets in terms of growth and opportunity for the next, what we think probably for the next 20 or 30 years. And it sort of gelled together, and that came together in our co-founding the portal with Emerging Frontiers.
Yeah, Baldwin, could I cut in and just add to that? Yeah, so Paul's absolutely right in that, well, we've been inside the financial services industry now for quite a while, and we've seen how the sausage is made, so to speak, and all of the problems that we come up against in regard to being able to put together an investment from a good idea. Paul spent a lot of time running around Central Asia for the last few years. You spent a lot of time in Sub-Saharan Africa, as have I, and there are no shortage of outstanding investment opportunities that we see, and these poor business owners or project owners are just starved for capital, right? They can't go to the local bank because the cost of debt is 20% or more, even if they could get access to it. It's insanely difficult to put together any sort of equity structure when you take into account the top-down political risk all the way down to the business itself. But I also know that there are a large number of my clients from my previous employer, Paul's, I'm sure yours, who are really interested in those kinds of opportunities, but they don't want to invest through 2 or 3 layers of funds, right? Nobody really likes funds anymore, and the regulators are cracking down on the lack of transparency with funds. I think if you saw the news with CalPERS this week, how they've decided to
that's going to be huge, bonds. I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, these guys realize what's happening. Like hedge funds aren't outperforming the S&P. They're not outperforming the FTSE 100, and yet we're paying them 2 and 20, and people are wise to that. So I think for me, the
and it's also a lot of work for the investors to sort of keep tabs on all these small players, right? So
absolutely. I mean, the catalyst for Emerging Frontiers came about. I was meeting with a gentleman in London a few months ago, and I was talking with him about some of the different opportunities I saw on a trip to Mozambique in agriculture. And we were at the time we were trying to put together a small fund to go invest in these projects, a small PE fund, and he just said, "Look, it's not for me." But then at the end of the meeting, he said, "Look, Kevin, if you were to put together something where I could invest in this directly into this particular farm, I would invest personally. I think this is amazing. I would love to be involved with this." And then I think just a couple of nights before, I'd been watching something on Bloomberg about crowdfunding, and that's just how it all sort of clicked. And Paul was one of the first people I spoke with. I started talking with you shortly after that, and then. Yeah, we've just spent the last 4 months with our heads down trying to create order from chaos and bring this business up online.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that I really like about your plan is more accessible, and obviously you're going to be doing that by bringing a place where people can find all sorts of information. But you're going to go beyond that, because what you're going to do is, okay, so this is our first episode of Frontiers TV. We're all in a room now. We're all in a conference room on 2 different continents. But the idea is that the investors will actually be able to go and see for themselves what all these entrepreneurs are up to. We will have regular people from the frontier markets. Hopefully the backgrounds behind these videos are going to become increasingly exotic, right? And that's,
exactly.
I think that's kind of huge.
Yep.
That's really bringing the frontier markets to the main street, or like you basically, because I think, I don't know if you guys agree, but after having sort of spoken to even qualified investors, professional investors for so many years, there's always that barrier that they just had a lot of difficulty crossing. I mean, most of them hadn't even ever been there. It was way too exotic. It was difficult to explain to their stakeholders, what if we could put this on the screen, right? This is what this is all about.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and I think that's the key. And you've spoken about it yourself, Baldwin, in capital attraction and the lessons you've put across there in that series about telling a story. And I'll give you an example. The manager I previously worked with, an investment manager, the Central Asia focus. Every year, whilst I was there, we took a group of investors to go and see firsthand, for a few days, just what exactly it is we were talking about in the investment reports every month and the phone calls every quarter, and showed them this is the real situation on the ground. These guys have, you'd be astonished. Some of these people that came and attended, these professional investors, they're 30-year veterans. They run massive organizations. They run huge funds, great pedigrees, and they were standard. They'd been investing in frontier and emerging markets from a desk in London or New York or Frankfurt or Hong Kong. They could tell you what the models and the risk analysis looked like, and they knew that there was all this economic growth and all these great companies growing out and springing up out of these economies, and yet even they were, when you put them on the ground there, astonished at what they found when they arrived. To be able to touch and feel and see the guys running these companies, the factories, the plants, just to get a look and feel around the countries themselves, it makes a huge difference. And it's that emotional buy-in, that personal buy-in, I think is really lacking, as Kevin said. There's so many layers, not only in terms of fees and structures, but in terms of that connection. And I think when it comes down to it, and we go back to basics, I think finance is really a very personal profession. It's about relationships. It's about, ultimately, it's the man on the street's money that's getting invested in these economies and these companies in order to create economic growth for them and obviously for the companies. And I think with Emerging Frontiers, that's what we're bringing back and injecting back into the world of finance and investment. That's the hope, anyway. That's the plan.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely right. And look, I think all 3 of us on this call right now are tech junkies. We're always looking for the next the next whiz bang app. And I compare what we're doing to, and I don't know if we can use this because obviously there's a trademark issue, but I would really love to become the Oculus Rift of investing, right? Where, as Paul was saying, all these guys who spend all their time at Canary Wharf or Wall Street or Midtown Manhattan all day long, and they know everything there is to know about a frontier market on paper, but they've never actually been there, and maybe they never want to go there, right? But in the year 2014, with all the technology available, we should be able to put together good content, access to managements, video, audio, podcasts, interviews. And we should be able to give that investor the level of access to the point where they can almost smell what it's like to walk through an avocado farm in Mozambique, right? And that's ultimately what we want. We want to give people that emotional buy-in so that they actually get excited about what they're investing in again, because that's the way it should be. Nobody gets excited about buying an ETF. You're not going to go down to the club and tell your buddies about that. But if you can see measurable, quantifiable impact on how your hard-earned capital is either helping to grow a business, making the world a better place if you're an impact investor, or you know exactly how your money's being invested, then I think that's important. And for that reason, I think if people would ask me to sum up the value proposition for Emerging Frontiers in one word, I think that word is transparency. People want to know how their money's being put to work, right? And that's the unified theme that we keep hearing about with all of our meetings, and I think that's what we ultimately want to reintroduce or to introduce back into the investment process.
I think I'd add to that, Kevin, also empowerment both for the investors, putting them back in the driving seat, so they do have that transparency, but empowerment for the entrepreneurs that are receiving this capital that is so transformational in taking them from a good idea to a good business, or from a great business to a global business that needs that growth capital to take it to the next level. But yeah, certainly transparency, number one, but also empowerment from a personal perspective.
Yeah, and because we're all such tech geeks, just to totally geek out, towards the end of this is like, then there's going to be a time when we have our cryptocurrencies when money transfer isn't an issue anymore. So that's going to be like, when you have that ability to, on a click of a button, send money anywhere. How cool is it going to be that you can just actually go and check out the destination of your funding online before you click that button? Maybe we'll put it all on one console. Who knows? There's a lot of change ahead here. So
actually, you're speaking about, that's what I think. That's my vision of the future. I think it's much closer than any of us are dreaming of right now. I think certainly in all of our lifetimes, that'll become something like that will become a reality.
Yeah. So there you go. Call us crazy. Call us bold. I don't know.
A healthy mix of all three.
The thing is, I'm sorry. I think we had a glitch on the sound. Sorry, Paul.
I'm saying crazy, bold, or I say call us crazy, call us bold, call us, think of another great adjective, probably a mixture of all of them.
Nutters. How about nutters?
Maybe we just coin a new word here and use that for, that would be the ultimate marketing gig. We just coin a new word that everybody wants to use, and we'll trademark it. You can't trademark words, can you? I don't know. That's just okay. Look, so you assisted at the birth of this. This is the first episode. It wasn't really as messy as the three of us would fear it would be. So technology sort of worked out reasonably well. I think actually quite well. I guess we're just going to have to figure out a way to give people more exotic backgrounds and more exotic people on here on a regular basis. And yes, I mean, we understand that this is also a media business as well as an investment business, so this is a mixture of both. A call to action out there. A few things. First of all, if you see anything that you like about Frontier Market, I'd love to hear on how people can contribute to this. Show us. I'm going to share, just see if I can pull this off, and then, yes, we can do this. So what you're seeing here is, if you type in emergingfrontiers.com online, this is the page that you will find. On this page, you have a few options. You can, go to Emerging Frontiers, which is the portal of where this will eventually be the home for all this, and that's where you can find all this information. Pathfinder Capital is where Paul and Kevin manage their money, and then the crowd portal, that's in beta mode, but that you're going to hear a lot more about that. And so if you go, another way I guess to look at us is by going to, if you're a fan of Google+, we've got our Google+ page. Follow us. Get in touch with us. You can see our episodes there. Or even better, just join our list on the Emerging Frontiers. And let's just get onto that page for a second. The page of the Emerging Frontiers looks a bit like this. So you can type in your email community, and would love to hear from you if you have anything to share. So, gentlemen, any last words for the first episode?
Watch this space. No, thanks everybody for your interest in what we're doing. We'll look forward to speaking with a lot of you in the coming months, and looking forward to launching this project.
Just to echo what, obviously what Kevin's just said, but certainly what you said, Baldwin, a call to action. This ultimately the success and how big this thing gets will be down to the contributors, which are the investors and the entrepreneurs and the content providers. And without them, this platform will just be an empty shell. So yeah, get online, get logged in, get signed up, and start sending us your ideas. And we hope to hear from you soon.
All right. Well, thank you for watching. Paul, Kevin, we're going to be back very soon, aren't we?
We are indeed.
Okay.